The man leading one of America's most powerful law enforcement agencies gets called out, live in front of the entire nation, not over some minor slip, but over the kind of behavior that makes ordinary people roll their eyes and mutter, of course the elites play by different rules. It wasn't just about a jet, it wasn't just about a weekend trip to a fight or a hockey game, it was about something much bigger: trust, fairness, and whether those at the top actually believe they're accountable to the people who pay their salaries. That's exactly what unfolded when Senator Peter Welch confronted FBI Director Kash Patel. What began as a question about a government plane turned into a masterclass in holding powerful officials accountable. Welch grounded the hearing by reminding everyone that political violence, whether from the left or right, is tearing the country apart.
At the outset, I just want to say what I think all of us believe, and that is that the political violence that is so afflicting our country, it doesn't matter whether it's from the right or the left. I mean, all of us have an obligation to fiercely advocate for our point of view. All of us have an obligation to respect people with whom we disagree. The folks we disagree with are our opponents, but they're not our enemies. And I hope all of us keep that in mind and do the best we can to set that example. I want to congratulate the FBI. I want to congratulate the Utah state and local law enforcement for the very good work that it did in apprehending the violent assailant of Charlie Kirk, and that is a terrible, terrible tragedy. Director Patel, at one point you made an announcement that the suspect was in custody. We got our man. It turned out that was not true. In fact, I think that was about 27 hours before the person now in custody was apprehended. Why did you make that statement?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you letting me address this. What the FBI does is not just locate and find suspects, but we also participate in eliminating subjects. And what we had at the time was a subject in custody in relation to this investigation. So in my commitment to work with the public to help identify subjects and suspects, I put that information out. And then when we interviewed him, I put out the results of that. And could I have been more careful in my verbiage and included an A subject instead of subject? Sure, in the heat of the moment, but I was doing the best I could.
In all candor, I don't quite get that, because if we have our man, that would suggest to the public that everybody can rest and relax and not then continue to provide information to local law enforcement and to you. Well, so that was a mistake.
I don't see it as a mistake. I see it as something working with the public to identify that there was a subject
so if
in
you
custody.
If you put out a statement that says we've got our man, and in fact it turns out that you didn't have your man, that's not a mistake?
But that's not what I said.
Well, I'll go on. That's my understanding. A second thing that is really important in the FBI, but it's important in every agency, is that the folks who are doing good work get supported for the work they're doing. And a number of highly successful FBI agents have been let go. And I want to just ask you a little bit about that. You know who Brian Driscoll is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And my understanding is he served at the FBI for over 18 years. You agree?
I believe that's accurate.
Special agent in charge of the Newark office. He was commander of the FBI's hostage rescue team. That's a very prestigious and responsible position, correct?
It is.
Section chief of the Critical Incident Response Group's tactical section. You've got to be pretty good to get that high responsibility. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
He oversaw 55 SWAT teams, and they're like the elite of the elite, right? They go in to the dangerous situations, right? He got a Medal of Valor for his participation in a raid on ISIS terrorist Abu Sayyaf, who had kidnapped American citizens Kyla Mueller, right? Mueller? Is that right?
I know.
You're in agreement, right?
I know Kayla Mueller's family, yes. I know this.
Okay, and he got Kurt Meyer, somebody who had barricaded himself in a bar after he killed 4 people and wounded 2. And Driscoll was part of the team that went in there and took that guy out, right?
I don't have all the details, but I'll take your word for it, Senator.
And he got into trouble when when Emil Bove demanded a list of FBI agents who investigated January 6th and was apprehensive that what did happen ultimately would happen, and that is those folks would get fired. I mean, do you agree with me that a boss who stands up for his subordinates when they did the job that was asked of them is a stand-up person and somebody to be admired?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
Pardon me?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
But Driscoll got fired, right?
Again, that matter is under litigation, and the matter you referenced occurred before I was
Okay, but
director.
let's just keep it really narrow here. He's fired, right?
Yes, he was terminated.
And he has to be, there's somebody communicates to him that he's terminated, correct?
That's my job.
That's your job. So you communicated to him that he was fired.
I did.
So, you know, I have a hard time with this because that record suggests to me that this person is like worthy of consideration for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he got fired.
But there's also a record of other information that was available, and now that this matter is pending litigation, we will get that out in due course. But as you can
this
agree,
so-called, so you've got, quote, other information that you see as a valid basis to fire somebody who, from what I can tell, had an absolutely outstanding record and who crossed the threshold of getting in trouble because he was standing up for agents serving under him who did work that was assigned to them that happened to be related to the January 6th uprising.
again, you're correlating based on your information the reasons for his termination, and I'm telling
No,
you,
that's
there's-
right. Let me ask you another question. You know, when you were here, you were rightly critical, not here actually, I guess it was on Cash's Corner. You were rightly critical of the way that the previous FBI director used the FBI jet. And you said you wanted to ground Chris Wray's private jet travel that he pays for with taxpayer dollars to hop around the country. Let me ask you this. You know, on the weekend of, according to flight tracker data, on the weekend of March 7th, an FBI plane flew round trip from D.C. to Las Vegas, and you attended a UFC fight with Mel Gibson, and I'll show you that. Is that you, and is that true?
Yeah, you want to know the difference? I live in Las Vegas. I'm allowed to go home. I didn't leave a congressional hearing early on an FBI jet to dodge questions.
All right. Then on April 5th, you attended a hockey game in New York City. You don't live there, right?
No, I don't.
By the way, everyday FBI agents who are assigned in Washington don't get to fly home on a private jet.
Well, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay. In April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel
Are
Gibson.
you telling me I can't go home?
You know, you got to use some judgment here.
So when I'm at
Beth,
home,
you
I
would-
can't do what I'm doing when I go home.
let
Everybody
me
else
keep-
is allowed to go home,
Let
just
me
not
keep
me.
going. No, I'm glad you go home. I
Okay.
love to go home, but I don't go home on a private jet. On April 5th,
They're not
you
mandated to do so.
You attended a hockey game in New York City with Wayne Gretzky, and Flight Tracker says the FBI jet took you to and from New York City, where you don't live, right?
That's correct.
And on April 12th, on the following weekend, you attended a UFC fight, a fight in Miami, also on the FBI jet, right?
That's correct.
So what's the cost to the taxpayer for those 3 flights?
But I pay the commercial equivalent per the regs and the law. And so just so you know, when you are comparing me
I
to
just asked
prior
what
directors.
I asked what the cost was, and you don't know, I take it.
Yeah, and what I've done with the use of the private jet is use Andrews Air Force Base versus
Okay.
Reagan National as what the other directors have done
Bottom line
to
here,
save the taxpayer
Bottom
dollars.
line here, you flew home to Las Vegas. There's nobody else in the FBI who gets paid. They have to pay their own way if they want to go home, right? I mean, right?
Well, that's not accurate. Depending on where you're stationed, the FBI covers the bill to get home.
So are you telling me that FBI agents who are assigned in Washington, but who may live in Charlotte, they get paid by the FBI to go
Sometimes
home?
they do, yes.
Right. Another thing I want to say is this. You know, our local law enforcement has been stiffed. About $500 million in COP grants have been taken out of the budget. Those really help us in Burlington. They help us in Rutland. They really are important. And why in the world would we be cutting those COP grants when we need that local law enforcement, in part to partner with you?
Well, I
Do
think
you
you're speaking.
support that?
I think you're speaking to the Department of Justice grants, which I don't adjudicate, but also Vermont, just like every other state, has received a plus-up of FBI personnel.
Well, I'll tell you, that's not what we're seeing. The other thing, my understanding is that there's a requisition or an effort to get another plane for the FBI that would cost about $72 million. Is that right?
That's inaccurate. The FBI, because the jet, as you call it, is not my jet. We use it for operational needs. We use it for FTOX. We use it for HRT.
But that's the one you fly in,
And
right?
we have multiple fixed-wing assets, and one of them is on a wildly expensive lease that I deemed a waste of money, and I'm looking for a replacement in which the government can procure assets permanently.
Well, I would welcome you submitting to this committee the cost information about the jets that are under consideration. And according to our research, the specifications that are included in this request would result in an expenditure of between $72 million and $80 million.
That's
So
inaccurate, but I'll happily get you the right
I
numbers.
welcome getting the specific information.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
His words were calm, thoughtful, and rooted in something we rarely hear in Washington, the idea that opponents aren't enemies and that public service is about respect. But that moment of unity quickly turned into a clash because Patel's answers revealed something that cuts much deeper than political labels. For viewers at home, this wasn't just another hearing. It was a glimpse into how the people in charge see themselves and how far those expectations drift from what the public actually experiences. Welch's line of questioning pulled the curtain back on choices that send one loud, unmistakable message: there's one set of rules for everyday Americans and another for the people at the very top. The first crack in Patel's credibility came with his handling of a tragedy. After a violent attack on public figure Charlie Kirk, Patel publicly declared, "We got our man." Only problem, the suspect wasn't in custody. 27 hours later the truth came out. Welch hammered down on the obvious: if you tell the country the danger is over, people relax. They stop calling in tips, they stop paying attention, they trust that law enforcement has it handled. To the Senator, Patel's explanation that it was just a matter of wording wasn't good enough, because leadership is about precision, leadership is about being careful with the truth. And in that moment Patel chose speed over accuracy. But Welch didn't stop there. He brought up Brian Driscoll, a name that might not mean much to most people but should. Driscoll spent more than 18 years in the FBI, climbing to some of the most prestigious positions available. He commanded the hostage rescue team. He oversaw 55 SWAT teams, the elite of the elite. He earned a Medal of Valor after helping bring down a terrorist who had kidnapped Americans. In another case, he personally engaged in taking out an armed killer barricaded inside a bar. This is the kind of agent Hollywood movies are made about: a man who went into the most dangerous situations and lived to tell the story. And yet Driscoll was fired. The reason, according to Welch, it came after he pushed back when a list of agents involved in January 6 investigations was demanded, agents who sure enough eventually lost their jobs. Welch framed it simply: a boss who stands up for his subordinates, who protects the people under him for doing the job they were ordered to do, is the kind of leader we should admire. Yet Patel, by his own admission, delivered the message that Driscoll was terminated. Suddenly the contrast was glaring. The man who risked his life on the front lines was shown the door, while the man sitting at the top was busy defending his own perks. That's where the jet came in. Welch switched gears and pointed directly at something tangible, something every taxpayer could understand: travel. Flight tracker data showed that Patel used an FBI jet to attend a UFC fight in Las Vegas with actor Mel Gibson, to show up at a hockey game in New York alongside Wayne Gretzky, and to sit ringside at another UFC fight in Miami. Not once, not twice, but on multiple weekends. When confronted, Patel defended himself by saying Congress made it mandatory for him to use the government jet. He insisted that he pays the commercial equivalent cost. But Welch, speaking for every working-class American who has ever had to book their own flight, called it out. Ordinary FBI agents don't get taxpayer-funded flights to go home. They don't get a private plane to take them to sporting events. They buy their own tickets, they sit in coach, and they deal with the same delays and crowded airports as the rest of us. Yet the man at the top, he's flying private, rubbing shoulders with celebrities and justifying it all as business as usual. This wasn't about legal loopholes or congressional rules, it was about optics. Because in public service, perception matters just as much as policy. When Americans see their leaders treating taxpayer money like a personal perk fund, the message is clear: there are two Americas, one for the people who grind every day to pay the bills, and another for the few who live above it all. Welch didn't let it slide. He pressed Patel on the deeper question: if the FBI can find room in the budget for luxury flights, why can't it protect the budgets that actually matter? That's when Welch pulled out the $72 million figure. According to reports, the FBI was looking into acquiring another plane, one that could cost between $72 and $80 million. Patel tried to deflect, calling those numbers inaccurate, but Welch's point was bigger than the price tag. Local police departments, including those in Welch's own Vermont communities, had just lost $500 million in COPS grants, funding that supports officers' training in essential safety programs. In plain English, money for jets is on the table, but money for keeping neighborhoods safe isn't. If you strip away the politics, it's a question anyone can understand: what should come first? Boots on the ground protecting families, or high-priced aircraft so officials can fly in style? Patel insisted the planes were for operational needs, but that didn't erase the image of UFC fights, hockey games, and celebrity hangouts on the taxpayers' tab. The bigger issue here isn't just about one man's travel habits, it's about credibility. Welch made sure the public understood that trust is fragile. Every time a leader bends the rules, every time they use their position for convenience or perks, they chip away at the faith people have in institutions. And once that faith is gone, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. Think about it: a decorated FBI agent is fired after standing up for his team, while the director gets to fly to Las Vegas with movie stars. A premature announcement about a violent suspect leaves the public misinformed, but the explanation is brushed off as just wording. At the same time, local law enforcement loses funding while the agency discusses new multi-million-dollar jets. These aren't isolated mistakes. Together they paint a picture of priorities that are out of sync with what the public expects and deserves. Welch didn't yell. He didn't grandstand. He did something far more powerful. He asked the kind of questions regular Americans would ask if they had the chance. Why do the rules apply to some but not to others? Why are frontline heroes punished while leaders reward themselves? And why should taxpayers foot the bill for perks when communities are told there's no money for safety? At its core, this exchange wasn't about politics, it was about accountability. Do public officials see themselves as stewards of the people's money, or as elites entitled to special privileges? That's a question bigger than one man, one jet, or one hearing. It's about whether we accept double standards in government, or demand something better. And that's why this moment matters. Welch exposed a truth that too often gets swept under the rug. Leadership isn't about perks, it's about example. The FBI director doesn't just run an agency, he sets the tone for thousands of agents across the country. And when the tone at the top looks like entitlement, it trickles down. It feeds cynicism. It makes people wonder whether anyone in power really plays by the same rules as the rest of us. So here's the takeaway: this wasn't just a fight over a jet, it was a fight over fairness, over whether those in charge live by the standards they impose on everyone else. Welch's questioning reminded us that accountability isn't optional, it's the foundation of trust in government, and when that foundation cracks, the whole house starts to shake. Now the question is yours: should officials be allowed to use taxpayer-funded jets for personal events like UFC fights and hockey games, or should stricter rules be put in place to protect public trust? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, I'll be reading them. And if you want more deep dive breakdowns like this, don't forget to hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, and give this video a like. Because these conversations aren't just politics, they're about the kind of country we want to be.